You are listening to the Overcome Pornography for Good podcast, episode 212, What's Possible with Daniel. Welcome to the Overcome Pornography for Good podcast, where we take a research-based, trauma-informed, and results-focused approach to quitting porn. This approach has been revolutionary and changed thousands and thousands of lives. I'm your host, Sarah Brewer. Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast episode. Today we have Daniel and Jessica on today. So Jess is a coach in the program. She's a one-on-one coach. She also does group coaching. She's incredible. And Daniel is one of our amazing clients that we wanted to showcase today and let him share his story with you all. So yeah, anyways, do you guys want to say hi? Jess, do you want to start and say hey?
Yeah, hey. I always love being on the podcast. So thanks for having me.
Yes, we love it. And Daniel, you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Yeah, perfect. Hello. Excited to be on the podcast. I've listened to many, if not all of the episodes. So fun to be part of one of the episodes.
Yeah, so just go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and your story, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. So my journey, as far as my journey with pornography, is what I'll focus on. It all started after elementary school. I like to think of myself as one of the cool kids. I was very well liked. I had a lot of friends. And then junior high hit. And we know many of us, junior high is tough for most people. Most people have this moment where you're trying to figure out who you are. And unfortunately, a lot of my friends from elementary decided, you know what, we don't like him anymore. He's not cool. And
Oh,
that really it wrecked my self-esteem. And I just started feeling low. And I already was very strict with myself, very hard on myself anyway. So I was like, this is my fault. I'm the problem. And so I started turning to pornography slowly but surely, whether that was on the television or whether that was on the internet. And I would find things, and it helped me to just not feel as lonely or empty. And that kind of continued until I remember I got called into the bishop's office to become the deacon's quorum president when I was 12, 13. And I just said, look, I got to tell you this. I've been struggling with pornography. And he was so awesome and so
mm,
helpful to me. And it set this precedence for me that I could be open and honest about this and not fear it. And that is how it continued. I was able to tell my parents. And even in One Young Men, we had a young men's meeting where I shared my story with them. And I had a young man come up after and say, thank you. I had no idea that you were in the same boat as me. And I had no idea that someone like you would struggle with that. And so that kind of continued, and I got to the point where white knuckling it and just trying as hard as I could, I was able to stop and got ready to go on a mission. I went and served my mission and I loved it. And actually, on my mission, there were times when I struggled, whether that was with masturbation or with thoughts, but I was able to work with someone on my mission, etc. And came home, and a very similar story is it was a lot to come back and to try and deal with those emotions and to try and deal with the technology. Now, I never really had a phone growing up. I had one of the little flip phones, but then coming back and then finally having technology and needing it for school, but also being like, oh crap, I don't know if I can be responsible with this, was really hard for me. And so
mhm.
I worked for a long time, and I felt like I had a positive attitude, but for the most part, I was a lot of shame and a lot of hate just towards me, feeling like, why can I not get a handle on this? Why can I not get over this? And it
And
was
it's like, oh, sorry, I'm just gonna probably throw myself in here if that's okay. It also
please
sounds
do.
like probably some fear and like self-trust, like not really trusting self.
Oh yeah. Like I just didn't know if I could ever be alone with a laptop. And it felt that way. Like I had to depend on barriers and filters for the rest of my life. And I was trying to accept that, but at the same time I felt like there's got to be another way.
Mm.
And a long time passed and I found your program and I thought this is awesome. And I actually would just listen to the podcast and do like my own little work on the side for a long time. And then I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to join the program. And it's been wonderful working with Jess. And I've learned so many things that I never thought that I would. So that brings us up to today. So,
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit. Let's just start here with some of these questions, but some of those challenges for you in quitting porn before your work here with Jess or your work in the program.
yeah. So all or nothing thinking, or just that black or white thinking, was really hard for me. It was either I'm done with it forever and I'm never looking again, or I have to go for 50, 60 more years. That was overcoming pornography. That was beating the challenge. And I had to do that or I was worthless, was the perception that I had.
Well, and I want to jump in real quick if I can. I think, like, at the very beginning, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm remembering this wrong, but when we first started working together, it really was like you're a very accomplished person, right? And so that black and white mindset had served you really well for a long time in lots of different areas in your life. And so, of course, you were trying to use those same tools with overcoming pornography. And that's where we started. We started like pulling back from that a little bit, and which was hard.
Why do you think that is? Like, why is that such a, because this is so common that we hear a lot. Why is it so hard with porn to pull back from that all or nothing mindset?
I think it's this perception that, and I think it's really just a belief that if you look or if you go back to it, that it has something to do with you rather than just, I had a really hard day and I was looking for something to fill a different need. I think that for me, what I've noticed is that all or nothing thinking is because you're just focusing on the porn rather than the actual issues that you have, which for me would have been the self-esteem, the fear, the feeling like people didn't want to be around me, those other hurts that really needed to be healed. So I think it's missing the actual issue, the actual hurt and injury that needed to be healed and focusing just on the porn because it's just stop, right? Or this is the focus that you need to, and it gives you a drive, right? It gives you something to focus on, but it's so hard to stay motivated every time you mess up and think, I just went 6 months and now I'm back to zero. So
Yeah. And it's interesting too, if we're looking at other habits or if you want to stop other habits, maybe overeating, or maybe you're trying to go to the gym consistently, there doesn't seem to be as much angst around a slip up as maybe pornography for a lot of people. Wonder why do you think that is? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that with some of those, with diet and with exercise, we immediately associate those with positive things, right? If I'm going to the gym, that's a positive thing. And I think if we miss out on a positive thing, we're like, oh, we'll get it next time. But if we're actively participating in something that we consider to be negative or evil for a lot of people or bad, then it's, oh, wow, I'm using my time to do something bad rather than I'm missing out on something good. And I think it's easier to feel this like this, oh, I'm doing this bad thing because I'm bad rather than, oh, I just forgot to get to the gym or something came up and, that's a good thing, but I missed it.
Yeah,
So
okay. So tell us more about that. How did that affect you? What helped you with that?
I think as Jess and I worked through, I think what we noticed, she mentioned very accomplished. I was very focused in school. I worked really hard, straight A's, even through college. And I think when I was able to change my mindset from accomplishment based to a growth set mindset, it was like this incredible eye opening moment. I think, and Jess, you can speak to this too, but I think it just changed the way that I perceive myself because I don't know if beauty or just power, I just saw so much value in growth experiences rather than just accomplishments. So looking back, thinking, oh, well, I'm learning and I'm growing and I've had this difficult moment, but look at the things that I now know. And that's incredible. And changing that instead of I messed up here and that means that I'm bad, saying, oh my gosh, look at all the things that I learned and that's so great, rather than focusing on a accomplishment mindset, which would have said, I'm done with pornography, or I went 6 months, or I went a year. It helps me celebrate the little things, but then it also helped me to really feel good about why I'm here on earth. And we're here to learn, we're here to grow, and we're here to get better. And so celebrating those, I think, really helped me get out of that all or nothing, black or white thinking.
You see this like with so many people, but that drive, that ambition, and sometimes when it creeps into perfectionism, like it can be a really good and helpful thing. And sometimes it can take a nasty turn where it's really driven by shame. And so once we can take away a lot of that shame of like perfectionism, then it does become a growth. mindset. It becomes like, okay, I'm doing this because I want to grow, not because I have to like prove myself or I have to like prove my worth. It's like, no, I want to do this because I want to do it.
Yeah, really shifting that from like I have to, I'm choosing to.
Yeah.
Which is hard, especially if you're stuck in the shame and perfectionism. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, what else, Daniel? What other challenges did you notice?
I think that the black or white thinking was a big one. I had very positive influences growing up. I've listened to a lot of the stories, and I feel like a lot of people have had negative experiences, whether that was with a religious leader or with family. And that was none of mine. That I had people around me that were always just so positive. And so a lot of it was really me and the way that I perceive myself. That was, I think, what made it the hardest for me. My wife has always been super supportive during our dating. We talked about it, and it was such a positive and amazing experience. So all of that was really wonderful. So I think that the main thing that I would say that was really hard for me is just trying to change the way that I perceived my issue with pornography and how I saw what was being healed or what was being cured of this, or what was the change that I really needed. Because I had this perception of this is what it's going to look like when I'm there. And once I was able to change that mindset and rethink it a little bit, it made a world of difference. So
Yeah, so what is that? What was the shift for you there that was helpful?
the shift in how I perceive myself,
Yeah.
seeing myself more as a project rather than I don't know, a deliverable. Seeing
Mm.
myself as I'm building and I'm growing and I'm learning different things. And that's what makes me an awesome person rather than, oh, I can do this and I can do this and I can deliver here and I'm the best at this. Seeing myself differently, I think it's given me just something to be proud of. Like, oh, look, oh my gosh, like I screwed up big on that, but what an incredible opportunity for me to learn, right? And I feel like I'm always trying to like share this in any religious Sunday school, whatever setting. I'm like, it's about growth. It's about growth, everyone. We need to grow. We need to stop talking about, well, when we got married or sealed or when we served a mission. We need to talk about, well, how did we learn? How did we grow? How did we come closer to what we're wanting to be? Because that's what we're really focusing on. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Man, I love how you said that. It's being, how did you say it? I'm working on growth, not being a deliverable.
Yeah.
Because I think so many of us do that, right? Like we think about like, okay, I'm going to get better because so I can be a better spouse or I can serve other people better. I can do better at my job, right? But really it's making that shift to I want to be better for me.
Yeah, and I don't need to be a deliverable to be worthy. I don't have to be packaged up in this perfect package for someone to be enough or to be good enough. I love
We
that.
get to be a work in progress.
We get to be, and guess what? There's not really any other way. So,
Yeah.
so the more you accept, the quicker you accept it, probably the happier you're going to be. And I recently heard, so I was listening to another one of our past clients, and he was talking about how helpful it was for him to realize, wait, this actually is like never something that is just solved in the sense where, okay, now I've overcome porn and I've done it. Or this idea that what you're talking about and that it's not a problem. It's not a problem if this 5 years down the road, whatever, soon, if you're still working through this, it's not a problem. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we often get caught up and I feel like I struggle with this too, is we don't want to get to the point of, well, I'm just accepting where I am and I'm not trying to grow anymore, right? Like I'm just saying I'm good where I'm at. I don't need to change. And I think that a lot of people have that perception that when I am okay with where I am or when I am okay with this growth mindset, that I'm no longer going to work to overcome or to be better and to not really look at porn or act out with it anymore. And my experience has been the complete opposite. And my mind continues to want to tell me, like, well, you're not really trying if you're not focused on the accomplishment of overcoming porn. And I thought it's been the complete opposite for me. That where I've said, no, like, I'm not counting days anymore. I'm focusing mainly on how am I reacting and how am I learning and how am I growing. And it's been so much easier for me to process urges when they come. When I have a really tough day, this week has already been crazy for me. And I've just been able to get through it. I've been working at home alone with my computer, well, with my little cat, right? But I've even with those urges and those desires to act out because I've been so overwhelmed, I've just been like, no, I can do this. And so I think that's where a lot of people trip up is they think, well, no, I have to focus on days. I have to focus on these accomplishments. Otherwise, I'm not going to actually get to my goal. But really, your goal requires growth. So if you focus on the growth, then you're going to see progress. You're not going to, if we look at like a gym analogy, if you want to bench 2 plates, right? You're not going to get there in a day if you're not already benching that amount, right? If you need to start with just the bar and then add on little weights at a time, that's what's going to get you there. And if you forget about all of those little achievements along the way while you were growing and getting to the other goal, then that's a sad reality that you've missed out on all the things that you did. If you had to start with the bar and you got to 1 plate, that's incredible. Like you just added 90 pounds to how much you can lift. And I think that with pornography, we look at it and we're just not happy if we learn and we've grown in these experiences, but we haven't gone 6 months or we haven't gone a year, then I'm just not there yet. I'm not to my spot or I haven't reached my goal. And we miss out on all of the things that we're supposed to be learning and all of the things that are supposed to actually be of worth rather than that year or that mark. So,
yeah, because what can happen is maybe you do willpower for 6 months or a year, and it's empty at the end. You feel good for a minute. But if you've missed out on all of the learning or the growth, or even if that 6 years or whole year has been filled with self-hatred, that doesn't just go away.
no, and it's focusing only on Band-Aids.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we talked about, Dan, was the idea that there is no finish line. Think like, okay, I'm going to focus on this for 6 months and I'm going to cross that finish line. And this is never going to be an issue for me again. And that's we talked a lot about that, like dropping the idea of the finish line and being like, no, this is life. We're learning how to live life as a sexual being. And this is part of it. And there's no race. There's no finish line. It's just like, we're learning how to be a sexual being in the world that we're living in a way that aligns with our values.
Oh, yeah. And that's such a hard reality because there's something so gratifying about finishing something, right? That perception. And I don't know if you guys are like this, but when let's just think about food. When you've had something in the freezer for a long time and you finally finish that bag and you get to throw it away, there's something innately just gratifying, like, whew, I did that. Like, it is so gratifying. And I think that we often try and apply that to areas of our lives because of that feeling of, oh, yeah, I love checking stuff off. And we try and apply it into areas of our lives where it is empty, where checking things off is not filling that same void that is required of being a sexual being, of growing and learning and trying to just be better.
I think that's an interesting choice of words, that it's empty. And yeah, because this is something that we work with clients on all the time, is that you think that quitting, not looking at porn is going to make you feel happy or make you feel enough or make you feel worthy. But really, that relationship that you have with yourself, that's not going to come from just the mere act of not looking at porn. It's going to come from loving yourself, holding yourself, doing the inner work to love and heal and accept yourself, keeping commitments to yourself. It's a lot more deep than checking off the checkbox of I didn't view, so therefore I can feel good. Okay, awesome. Let's keep looking at this. Anything, I know we've talked a lot, but anything else you want to add about how this work has changed you, or what have been other significant transformations, breakthroughs, and results that you've experienced?
I think one other aspect or two other things on how this work has changed me is that when I slip up, because I still slip up, it doesn't impact me. Like before, when I'd have a slip up, I was devastated and I'd be down for the rest of the day, maybe even to the next day, just like, I'm a terrible person. I shouldn't have done that. I wish I would have thought through. Where now I'll have a slip up and I'll think, well, today's been a really crazy day. And like, it won't even be 5 minutes and I'll just be right back, getting to what I need to do. And so my turnaround on as far as when I do struggle is so improved to now where I'm like, I can see why I acted out and make plans for the future and say, okay, well, I understand that. I don't want to do that again, but I'm so much kinder to myself. And then the model, the circumstance, thought, action, feeling, and result, I use it in every aspect of my life. And I tell people about it all the time, like, well, have you thought that your thoughts are actually what are creating those feelings? Right?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, it's your circumstance. And people are always like, no, I never even thought about that. So I feel like most of Jess and my calls, like we wouldn't even talk about pornography. Like we would go straight into either a work situation or a family situation or something. It would talk about the model. So this work really is, it's not just about pornography. Like most of my coaching was about life and how to apply these tools in my life, which has improved the pornography use and helped me to see that in a different light. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, because it's all connected.
It all is. And the more I live, the more I realize that's true with everything too. Like not just porn. If there's other areas of my life, maybe it's sleep. Maybe I want to sleep a little bit more. Yeah, we can look at the sleep habits and work on those. But really, there's usually like the quality of your life and of your relationships impacts all of it.
It would be nice if it was like a quick, simple little, hey, solution where it's just like, yeah, we just need to do X, Y, and Z, and you're all done and figured it out. But we're humans are complex. We're a mixed bag, and we get to, I think part of that growth mindset is like that we stop like beating ourselves up for being complex and just like loving the opportunity of like, this is awesome. I get to learn so much about myself. I get to learn about like other people. I get to figure out this amazing experience of what it is to be alive.
Yeah. Because Jess is so good at all of this, especially the relationship stuff. And I remember I was talking to you once, Jessica, and I was like, relationships like are just hard because they're not black and white. They're never black and white. They're so complex. And you're like, yeah, that's the point. I was like, oh yeah, I've applied all these other areas, but oh yeah, relationships all just complex and beautiful. And how fun is that? So
Yeah.
that's like a pretty positive spin on it. Maybe instead of like how fun is that, maybe it's more like how deep is all of that? It's
Yeah.
not always fun.
Well, and I think it makes life richer,
Yeah.
right? Like relationships, but also like learning to, like what we've been doing with Dan is like learning to embrace all of the colors, right? Like all of the, like even the parts of us that we don't, or maybe darker or aren't as fun. And like being there for all of it just provides like such richness to our lives. And you're right. Like we don't necessarily need to like sugarcoat or like
Yeah.
make it happy, but like because it just provides that richness and that depth and that beauty. Yeah.
Okay, Daniel, how have your relationships, life, and your impact all grown as a result of this work?
I think that we were just talking about depth in relationships.
Mm,
It really has improved. I think that my relationship with my wife, there's just this no, I don't understanding. There's this we're just going to keep going with depth. There's this just feeling of love that I feel would not be there without this work that I've been working on. That without this trying to treat myself better and learning how to love myself and how to be to myself what she is to me, always in my corner, always supporting me, learning to be that for myself as well. Someone who has helped me to do that more for her. And when
yeah.
she has a hard day or when she has something go on in her life, I'm able to be that person that just listens and is there and present and not and think, oh, well, how would I want to treat myself? Because now I know how to treat myself and I know how to love myself. And so I'm able to hear out and understand when there's need for advice and when there's need for just a hug and love, etc. I've noticed that life, especially if we don't know how to challenge our thoughts or to think again, life can be so scary and so hard, especially with work, whether that's challenges of you have problems at work, whether that's politics. We won't get into that, but that could be if you don't know how to think again or challenge your thoughts, that could be so scary. Health. What if something happens to me and I don't have insurance? What if this happens and we can't pay for it? What if something happens to one of my family members? There's just so many what ifs in life that are so much harder without the kind of work that we do in this program. Understanding and trying to not fear life, but understand why things happen and why people feel the way they do. I think in not just with my life, but with others. I feel like I've been able to give others the benefit of the doubt more in relationships and try and understand, okay, when they're mad about something or when they're very passionate, there's something going on that's deeper than just the symptom. And I'm able to just listen and try and understand and ask questions and be curious rather than just attacking and be like, no, you're wrong. You shouldn't feel that way. Even if I may disagree, I'm able to ask. We have someone in our life that is so good at this. It's just being so curious. Even though they may have different values, they just are so good at why. Well, tell me more. And it's not like an annoying questioning, like we know that they're just trying to beat my argument or whatever. It's this really genuine curiosity. And I think that's been so helpful to my relationships with others, is being able to just be curious about why they believe or why they struggle with the things they do, and has helped me to love them more as I am learning to love myself more too. So
yeah, I love that. Okay, I want to touch on this fear aspect that you were talking about at the beginning of this call, but also the beginning of this statement, because it seems like there's also been a shift in your from being really afraid of the future and really afraid of yourself to now where it feels different, even though you haven't reached an end goal of overcome pornography for good because it doesn't exist. So talk to me a little bit about that, and how has the fear changed for you and your thoughts about the future and your self-trust and fear?
I think it's all intertwined with that growth and versus accomplishment. And the fear is very associated with accomplishment. What if I never, and then just a few accomplishments in life, what if I never get the job that I want? What if I never get married? What if I never am able to buy a home? And there's so much fear with that. And so much, what if I never overcome pornography for good? What if I never am able to really stop? And those are all focused on finish lines, like we've talked about. They're all focused on ending the race. And that's hard. What if I never finish the race? What if I break my leg and I just never get there and I never get the accomplishment that I want? And having changed that to, well, there's something to be grateful for, something to learn in every circumstance. If I never buy a home, that's okay. I maybe will have a van and we'll have a van life. It just opens up so many other opportunities in life that you can think of, because you're focused on just almost adventure, like the love from Up, like adventure is out there. And we have this excitement about what's next. Well, I don't know what's coming, but I know that I'm going to learn from it. And I know that it's going to help me become more the person I want to be if I allow it to. And I get to do that. So it's just so much more confidence in the future and not worrying about what might or may not happen.
What would you say to someone who's listening to that is like, oh, I would love to be there, but what if I don't ever learn anything from it? What if I am just a loser and just don't learn from the things and stay stuck forever?
I say that's a hard place to be, to feel that way. And one of the things in the program would say, well, let's analyze that thought and let's look for data and evidence that you are a loser, right? And I think that you'll find what you look for. But I think if you challenge that thought and you say, well, maybe I'm not a loser. I love one of the experiences I had with a friend that went through the program, the one that we talked about before. When he and I spoke, he said, get really good at using the word maybe. Maybe. And I love the word maybe. It is my favorite word because I understand that our thoughts, that our brains, and I love what I've learned in the program, and is that our brains want to protect us. So we have this we think the worst case scenario so that we can prepare for it or defend ourselves. And we can't just go from I'm a loser to wow, I'm incredible. We need to have that bridge thought or those opportunities to try and build to get to the other side. And so the thinking, well, maybe I'm not as much of a loser as I thought. Well, I have some friends that really like me, and maybe they wouldn't if I were a loser. Or maybe I did a really good job at work today. Maybe I think that for someone that is really struggling, feeling like I'm never going to get there, I think that you need to just start with maybe and just build from there. Maybe not. I mean, you get to think what you want to about it, because there's no real definite evidence that says, yes, this person is a loser. There's nothing online that has you listed and says equals loser, right? You get to think how you want to about you. And why wouldn't you be in your own corner? Why wouldn't you be the person who's going to be your biggest advocate saying, yeah, I am a good person. I can do this. So that's what I would say.
That's great advice.
I love that. Well, and I'm thinking like add as many qualifiers as you need to. Like maybe I might be, or maybe it's possible that I might not be a loser, right? Like even if maybe even still sounds too positive, like add more in. Like it's possible that maybe it's I might not be the biggest loser of them all. Like just leave a little crack as much as you can.
The principle is the trying to loosen up that belief that you have about yourself.
Yeah.
Even if we're not changing that belief, can we loosen it up just a little bit? That's the idea. Love it. Okay, Danielle, 2 last questions. What do you think is possible for you now as a result of you quitting pornography?
I did actually write some stuff out before this one. So I'm gonna I check over. I'm like, okay, what were my thoughts? I think that I was always so stressed. Throughout this call, we've talked a lot about growth, accomplishment, the maybes, being more in your own corner. I was always so stressed. Like, okay, I've gone this long, but now today we don't know. If I screw up, then I just blew the whole operation basically, and now I have to start over. And it was so overwhelming. And it had that fear that we talked about. We're coming full circle with everything. But now I just feel so much more confident that with the work that I'm doing, that pornography doesn't impact me, my family, or my decisions. And if you really think about what overcoming means, overcoming doesn't mean that it's not necessarily in our life, but it means that it doesn't impact or doesn't influence our life. And
thank you for
we're
saying.
always, well, yeah, we're always going to be surrounded by pornography, but I'm not going to allow it to influence how I feel about myself. I'm not going to allow it to determine what happens in my family or how I move forward with my life. And I always struggled with the thought that I am in this position where I can't ever overcome this. And that was the biggest issue, was me beating myself up over pornography use that would happen occasionally because I'd have a bad day, and I'd train my brain to think that. So I think what's possible really is that porn is a reality of our world. It's only going to become more and more prevalent in this world. It's only becoming more and more accessible. And so we need to have, I need to be in a position where I'm not allowing it to influence me. And I feel like with the work, the thought work, the belief work, the focusing on things that I can control and focusing on loving myself and that growth mindset, really anything is possible. We had an experience. We'll try and, I know timing wise, we want to make sure that people actually listen, right? So I'll try and be short with this, but we had an experience where Jess invited me to write a letter to my childhood self. And there was so much learned there. But then we had this kind of fun activity, and it really was fun, about writing a breakup letter to pornography. And so I'm writing this letter as if pornography were my girlfriend and saying like, look, like, I'm so grateful for like the things that you've helped me learn, and like, but we're done. Like, I can't do this anymore. You're not helping me be the person that I want. And I know that we might meet up or hook up occasionally, or it might happen because in a moment of weakness, but I'm moving forward and I'm choosing to love me. And I think that really just sums up. It was such a unique experience. I would invite anyone to do it. It's fun writing out like, these are the things that hurt me, and these are the things that like really helped me. So I'm like grateful to you, but we're not getting back together anytime soon. So
I love it.
So I just think anything is possible. Really, you get to be the master of your fate and the master of your soul. So
I love that. That's a fun exercise. I love that. That's great. And yeah, overcome pornography for good does not mean that it will never, ever be there. It means it doesn't control you anymore. It means it doesn't take over your life. It doesn't cause you to be filled with dread and fear and shame, and also not making decisions for you. I love that. Okay, and then lastly, are there any other insights or anything else that you want to share with our listeners who are working through this issue?
I think let's sum up the things that were most valuable to me were focus on growth and learning more than accomplishments or days or in any aspect of your life, not just with pornography. And then remember to give yourself credit where it's due. Be kind to yourself. Be like, oh, hey, look, I was home alone with my devices all day, and I managed my urge. And be really forgiving with this, and really almost to the point where you're almost patronizing yourself. Like, hey, look, I did a really good job for 5 minutes today, because just trying to change that mindset has an incredible effect in the long run. And then I think The biggest thing that I realize is remember that you're trying and you're taking steps to be better, and that maybe you're healed, you're cured, looks a little different than what you've imagined when it comes to pornography, but it's so much more beautiful and full. Being in the position where you're healed doesn't equal that you're just never, ever going to see it again, or that you're never going to have to process an urge ever again. It's so much more beautiful being in this position where you come to an understanding of yourself and why you do the things you do. And that's what I would say, because it was never really about the porn. It was always about you. And this is an opportunity. Porn really is an opportunity to learn those things about yourself that you may never have had an opportunity to learn.
Thank you. That's so great. I love that. You've really done the inside work and you can feel it. And just like such a great example of kind of what I'm trying to say to people too is like, stop trying to feel better by just not looking at porn. We've got to do this inner work. We've got to do the inner work. We've got to change how we're doing this. And that's what's going to allow lasting success and happiness and peace and healing and those things. So just thank you so much for sharing that. I have loved hearing your story, Daniel.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to share it.
Yeah, thank you. Anything you want to add, Jess, before we end?
No, I think Daniel covered it all really well. I just feel like a proud mama over here.
Yes, I love it. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll talk to you next week. If you want to come and join us and work with Jess in the program, I think she's got some spots we can get you in. So just reach out to us or come to centerforovercoming.com/work with us. All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. I want to invite you to come and listen to my free class, How to Overcome Pornography for Good Without Using Willpower. We talk about how to stop giving into urges without pure willpower or relying on phone filters so that you can actually stop wanting pornography. We talk about how to stop giving up after a few weeks or months, and spoiler alert, the answer isn't have more willpower. And then lastly, we talk about how to make a life without porn easily sustainable and permanent. If you're trying to quit porn, this class is a game changer. So you can go and sign up at sarahbrewer.com/masterclass, and it is totally free.